devolves into gun control debates, and it's like that's the only thing we know how to do here. And I think it's classic American psyche that our brains, we have become so sloganized and so unable to process complicated, nuanced problems and think about things in a complicated way. We just want to, school shooting, let's jump into our camps and let's start fighting. This is what we do. This is all we know how to do. Hello, good morning or afternoon or evening, whatever time it is where you are. Thanks for joining me here on the Larson Hicks Show. And happy end of the month of May to you. It is the 26th of May, so it's a few days after the shooting that happened down in Texas that everybody is trying to figure out how to think about, and including myself. So I'm getting online here to kind of think through and talk through all this with you. I hope that this is a helpful conversation. And I apologize. It's been so long since I've been able to upload a video. It's just been a little bit of a busy season. I feel like May is always the busiest month, it seems, of the year. I think we're always surprised by it. It always kind of sneaks up on us, but it's been a very busy month. So excited to be getting to the end of that and the beginning of summer. The pool just opened around the corner, so kids got to go to the pool for the first time of the summer. So pretty excited about that. But yeah, let's jump into the school shooting down in Texas. It was a high school boy. Don't know a lot about him other than, I think the couple of things I've seen is that he was described as a loner. Sounds about right. And by right, I just mean typical. And he shot his grandma, and then went to an elementary school and shot a bunch of people, kids, and mostly, and I think teachers. Just awful. Something like 21 people, last I heard, had died. It's such a terrible thing, and it's interesting how it's become almost commonplace in America now. I remember when Columbine happened, and it was absolute shock. Across the country, just the idea that somebody would do something like this just was absolutely baffling. And I don't think we'd ever seen anything quite like that before. I'm sure there have been shootings. I remember reading about in Austin, I think in the 70s, a guy posting up in a tower and shooting people from the tower. So there's been crazy things like this before, but Columbine was the first time it happened at a school. The kids committed suicide, at the end of it, and it was very planned out, and it was just took everybody by surprise, and was really traumatic for the whole country. And now it's become a thing. It's like another school shooting happened. The thing that's interesting, the thing that's interesting to me is that it's become a thing, and that the fact that it's become a thing has not been all that disturbing or shocking to people. It's just become a thing, and every time it happens, there's like this ritual that happens. Liberals and progressives just do what they do best, what they love to do, which is to emote and virtue signal. So they get on social media or get on press conferences and just emote, and show how emotional they can be, and then they virtue signal about how good they are and how they want to do the right thing, but nobody else does, and it just makes them want to cry. So there's that. That's happened. That's happening. That'll continue to happen. Ironically, it's a lot of elites and politicians who live in gated communities behind armed guards, and they certainly aren't interested in that going away. But I really do think that the whole gun control debate, predictably, this devolves into gun control debates, and it's like that's the only thing we know how to do here. And I think it's classic American psyche that our brains, we have become so sloganized and so unable to process complicated, nuanced problems and think about things in a complicated way. We just want to, school shooting, let's jump into our camps and let's start fighting. This is what we do. This is all we know how to do. It's really sad because I think anybody with a brain who actually just stopped and shut off the noise and thought about this, there are a lot of really obvious things that we would start thinking about. Why in the world would anybody do this? Has this kind of thing been happening for a very long time? No, it hasn't. This is a relatively new phenomenon. Guns aren't new. Gun laws and the types of guns that are available are not new. There's nothing new that's happened there, but the preponderance of these kinds of shootings is certainly a new thing. I mean, 20 years or so really is what we have of history of these kinds of things, and nobody wants to ask the question, why have we never had this kind of thing before, and why are we having it more and more and more, to the extent that it's become like a really, really common thing that we talk about in the news every couple of months. And so I think that that's one of the really interesting things. Just to in passing, on the gun control conversation. I mean, I work in emergency medicine, in that field. I'm at a staffing company, and our ER doctors talk all the time about how some hospitals are what they call a gun and knife club. Oh yeah, that place is a gun and knife club, which is like shorthand for you're going to see gunshot wounds if you work a shift there. That's just kind of that's how that place is. And that's not how it is everywhere. It's not like that. It's not like every hospital, and especially every hospital in a red state that has a lot of guns. It's not that. It's totally cultural. And it's and in fact places like Chicago where they have laws against guns, and yet they have the most gun violence in the country. And then, again, you look at places like Switzerland or even in America, in Kennesaw, Georgia, guns are required. Gun ownership is required for every citizen or every household. And you don't see any sort of connection between the amount of guns, the number of people who have guns, and anything like this kind of craziness. So we know it's not guns. And anybody really who really cares, like if any of that emotion and virtue signaling has any shred of sincerity, then they'd be honest and go, look, let's do something about this. I want this to end, and we got to do something. Even if we could, tomorrow round up every gun on the planet and melt them all down and throw them into the pit, or today if we could do that, tomorrow every evil man in the world is going to start manufacturing guns, and every person concerned with their safety and their ability to protect themselves against those evil men are going to also start manufacturing guns or finding ways to defend themselves. So it's not like this isn't going away. Guns are not going away. Sorry, you live in a world with guns. You can cry about it, and you can virtue signal about it. But you live in a world with guns, and that's not changing. And as long as there are bad guys with guns, there will need to be good guys with guns. And there's always going to be guns. So let's just stop pretending like crying about that is going to stop this phenomenon that we're seeing. And let's also stop pretending like it's the cause, because we know it's not. At the same time all of this is happening, we've been seeing every year steadily teenage suicide is at an all-time high and just keeps getting worse and worse and worse. There's no doubt that somebody who does something like this is mentally a mess, is psychologically, mentally a mess, spiritually, and so if we care about the problem, we need to be talking about mental health, and we need to be talking about what is the source of this phenomenon. And I think it's a real. I think that's a real obvious thing. I don't think that's like a revelation to anybody. It's become, like I said, a ritual that we perform in our country now. Anytime there's anytime there's sin, there needs to be atonement for that sin, and so we see these shootings, and the atonement needs to be, well, let's offer a sacrifice of emotion and virtue signaling. To the gods of progressivism, and we'll just do that, and we can all feel better about it for a while. Fast forward 20 years, we outlaw guns, and the school shootings continue to happen. what do we do then? I mean, do we keep acting like it's a gun problem? So anyway, so that's a little bit about guns, but really it's about mental health. It's about depression. It's about people being enslaved to sin and hopeless. And it's a biblical concept that without a vision, people perish. Literally, people die if they don't have a vision, if they don't know where they're going. And I think about the story. There was a story. Maybe it was Jordan Peterson. I can't remember who I heard this from, but this story of this Vietnamese man who had lost his leg because of a unexploded ordnance left over from the war that he stepped on and blew his leg off. And this man was suffering from depression and wasn't really getting anywhere and was becoming suicidal and finally went to a psychologist and the psychologist was able to fix him, was able to help him get overcome his depression. And his prescription was a cow. His prescription to the man was to say, you need to go get a cow. And the kind of moral of the story is that the man had lost his purpose. He had a calling. He had a job. He had meaningful work that he was no longer able to do. He's a farmer or something, and so he had become depressed because he felt useless. He felt like he didn't serve a purpose, and the psychologist was like, "Yeah, you don't have a purpose. You're not doing anything meaningful. You should do something meaningful." And this guy got a cow and realized, "Hey, I can care for a cow. I can sell the milk. I can provide." And I think that's what we're looking at right now in the world is a lot of depression coming from incredibly wealthy, incredibly sheltered, safe, spoiled, rotten, frankly, people who are depressed. And the depression is not is a result of being worthless and not having purpose. I think one of the things that we should think about whenever we look at one of these school shootings is we need to ask ourselves, like, where are these people coming from, right? That are doing these things. Where are they coming from? Who's training these people to be this way, right? That's a legitimate question. How do people get this way? And I think it shouldn't be a crazy thing to say, how many of these were educated in the public school system, and how many of them were educated in private religious schools? Is there any connection there that we should maybe look at? And I think we could ask the same thing of, let's look at the Black Lives Matter rioters. Who taught them to behave this way? And the answer is clear. Our government schools, we've handed our kids over to these government schools, and they are actively, progressively trying to reprogram our kids. They're removing any concept of hope, of transcendent good in the world, any kind of aspiration to virtue. It's become 100% about brainwashing our kids into this hopeless ideology, of this world that really is just, especially if you are white and you are male, you should just feel guilty all the time for everything that you and your people have done. And if you're not white or male, you should be angry all the time about all the evils that have been done to you because you've been oppressed. It's a lot of anger and hopelessness about climate, about the climate change or climate crisis or global warming or whatever it is they call it these days. They change it every couple of years because the ideas suck and don't hold up, and so they got to modify them. But overpopulation, that's becoming more and more of an absurd idea. The data keeps coming out that we are in an unsustainable situation as in the world with underpopulation, with birth rates that are way below the replacement rate. We are heading for a massive crash economically and in terms of just our infrastructure and our economy. Like we're not going to be able to take care of ourselves and as we age, because there won't be enough people to care for us, right? And so anyway, that's this climate stuff, this overpopulation stuff, completely unscientific. All of this stuff is unscientific. But there's really and then there's utter confusion about the truth or the purpose of sex, of what sex is for, what it should be, what it does. Just sex. We're in a culture that's obsessed with sex and utterly confused about sex. And so, if we cared about these shootings, where is the data, right? Where, like, if we're scientific and we are progressive and we're trying to look for real solutions, then where's the data? Someone do an audit here on the cultural, psychological, mental, family issues at play in all of these mass shooters. Could we take a poll or do a survey of how many of these school shooters lived in a home with an intact family, with a husband and wife that were married? How many? Was it 100% or was it 0% or where was it, right? How many of these mass shooters were religious? Were regular church attenders, believed in a transcendent God that was bigger than themselves and that had a purpose for the world? How many? Is it zero of these people, these shooters, or is it 100% of them? I think just by asking the question, I think we all have a pretty good idea of where these numbers are going to land. How many were addicted to pornography? Exposed to pornography at a very young age, had unfettered access to the internet, and how many of these shooters found themselves in that environment? Video games, internet, pornography, screens all day, every day. What was that like? What was the amount of usage on the internet and with pornography, right? How many of these are transgender or homosexual or pedophiles, right? I mean, let's look into it, right? I think if we start to look at these things, I think real obvious patterns will start to emerge, and somehow it's we're not allowed to go down that road or ask those kinds of questions. But I think the answer here is obvious, and it's a gut-wrenching thing to watch the carnage, and the question is, how long? Are we going to sit and watch all of this happen? Watch this destruction of the moral order of the universe. We're living in the ruins of Western civilization, a kind of golden age of humanity, where there was a long sustained period of progress in the sense of economic growth, of just growth in terms of civilization, governments, structures, art, and literature, and so on and so forth. And we're the inheritance of all of this great stuff. That was the result of a good 1,000 years or so, 1,500 years or so of Christianity spreading across what we think of now as Western civilization, and turning godless pagan cultures into civilized Christian cultures. And so how long, are we going to think that we can just upend everything, just throw all of the order and structure of humanity that we've inherited out the window, just completely jettison it, and expect that we're going to continue to enjoy the benefits of that world? There is a moral order to the universe. There is a plan and a structure for humanity that leads to joy, that leads to fulfillment, that leads to hope, fruitfulness, meaning, community, and it's not a secret. And I think if you don't know, I'd love to talk to you about it. It is the gospel. It is actually the gospel of Jesus Christ that transforms cultures, that transforms human hearts. I think we think that the gospel is just about saving people from going to hell. It is not about merely about saving people from going to hell. The gospel transforms people, and it transforms cultures. It actually makes whole civilizations different. It's not, and this is one of the failures of the church in our age, is that we have so utterly neutered the gospel of its and that it is no longer able to produce fruit, because all it is anymore at most churches in America is a message that you can pray a prayer and have your sins forgiven and go to heaven, and that's it. That's all you need to know, and that's just not the gospel. The gospel is the good news of the coming of the kingdom of God. The King is Jesus. It's the good news of the King, that the King Jesus has come. The Messiah that was waited for, that we waited for, has come, and he is now reigning. And it's time to go spread the good news that the kingdom of God has come, and its King is Jesus, and so. Submit to him, bend your knee, pledge your allegiance to him. He is good, and his ways are good. He is the eternal Logos, the Word of God, who created the earth. And so that's my message to you. If you are sitting here just utterly confused or dejected or emotional about this whole thing, is that let's get to work. There is work to be done, and that work is being done, by the way. So while you've got a lot of people just emoting and virtue signaling, there are people who are out there building civilization from the ground up. There are Nehemiahs out there who are standing on the wall with a shovel in one hand and a sword in the other, because they're constantly being attacked while they're trying to rebuild the city of God. People who are starting businesses, people who are starting schools, starting families, raising kids, homeschooling them, or banding together with other like-minded believers and educating them. There are people who are starting churches, and this is the work of that is required in order to stem the bloodshed. And unfortunately, until the church recovers a Kuyperian worldview, that every square inch of the earth, there's not a square inch of the earth over which Jesus Christ does not say mine. Until we recover that kind of Christianity that views Jesus as the actual King of all things, of all of the earth, then we're going to continue to leave this world in its state of hopelessness and decay. The good news again is that there have been so many glorious periods throughout history where the gospel has come and where God's people have gotten to work and have built glorious civilizations that in many cases last for hundreds and hundreds of years. And so our age there's no reason why our age can't be the same. And frankly, we have so much more to work with than our ancestors did. We are living in the ruins of a once Christian nation, and there's a lot of there's a lot of good foundations and infrastructure there. There's a lot of things that need to be broken up and rebuilt from the ground up. But there's also a lot of good that we can build on. So anyway, I just want to. Those are my thoughts and my feelings about this school shooting that's happened in Texas, and the school shootings that will continue to happen until we start to recognize that our state schools are hopeless, that there's no redeeming these schools, that Christians need to get back to the work of educating and building culture. I'll just stop by. This is the last thing I'll say, and this I've already implied this and said this a little bit in different ways, but we do really need to recover a full-orbed view of the work of the church. And the church has become, like everything else, super specialized and super narrow. And it's now, churches only exist to give you a place to be on Sunday morning for an hour or two, where you're going to hear a TED talk and hear kind of a pretty bad contemporary Christian music concert, and that's what it is. A place where you go and say hi to a bunch of people and smile, and then go back home and go back about your business of being a modern American. And there was a time, if you look at all of the, half of the hospitals in America still bear the marks of the church, Catholic or Baptist or Methodist or Adventist or whatever. There was a time when the church, even in America, thought that part of the work of the church was to heal people and to extend life to those who are hurting. The same is true of orphanages and the foster system and everything. The church has just said, yeah, Jesus Christ said this is true religion, to care for widows and orphans in their distress, but we'll just send some money off to some people that definitely not some people in our town or in our community, like some people that live in a different place we don't have to actually interact with, and generally we're just going to entrust the state to take care of those children who are without parents who are able to care for them. That's their job, That's why I pay taxes. That's not a Christian perspective, and that's not obedience to what Christ said true religion looks like. So we've just kind of ceded all of this ground to the state, to corporations. We've kind of said the church, we just want a small job. We don't want to be responsible for anything. And this is what we get. This is the result of us handing all of this stuff over. Education of kids is the responsibility of parents, and the church should be a community and a support system and an aid to families in training up their children. And we've gotten family and church out of this whole business and just handed it all over to the state. We drop them off and pick them up. It's free, it feels free. It's not free. It actually costs insane amounts of money. If we had that money back and could spend it how we want, we could do so much more with it and do a much better job. But it feels free because it's what we're used to. So anyway, I'll get off my high horse now. I hope this was helpful. Certainly thinking and praying about what's going on in Texas, and for those families, I would encourage you to do the same, and pray that God saves America, that God saves our kids and this generation, this hopeless generation that needs Jesus, and pray that He inspires churches around the country to respond to this kind of thing by saying enough. We're going to stop sending our kids to public schools. We're going to stop outsourcing the education of the next generation to people who hate everything we stand for, and we're going to start taking responsibility for it. We're going to start exhorting our people to take a responsibility for the paideia of God, the training up of our children in the way that they should go. So hope this is helpful. Hope you have a great rest of your week. Kind of a bummer topic, but God is good, and I believe that we're living in a time where apocalyptic times, where God is is unveiling and revealing so many things that we've kind of have become kind of hidden in plain sight to us for a while now. And so I'm thankful, at least for that we're starting to see maybe things a little bit more clearly. And I hope that you are. And I hope that this video helps you do that. And I hope that you share this video or resources like this with with people that are still asleep. And I pray that happens. So thanks again. We will see you next time here on the Larson Hicks channel. Cheers.